Today I'm going to be making this bread machine pumpkin yeast bread. It is delicious. Hey y'all, welcome to Robin on the Farm. Today I'm going to be making a really delicious pumpkin yeast bread, and I'm going to be using my bread machine to do it. This bread is fantastic to make ham sandwiches a little bit more special. It's also really good for French toast and also for pumpkin bread pudding. So that's what I use these loaves of bread for. Let's just get started. It's a really simple recipe. I'm gonna start with a half a cup of milk. I'm gonna use whole milk. You can use milk alternative, you can use skim milk, whatever you wanna use, but a half a cup of milk. Just put that right on into your bread machine bread pan. Next ingredient is an egg. You want one large egg. I went ahead and cracked it so I wouldn't have to wash my hands, but you just put the egg in there whole, just like that. You don't have to scramble it up or anything. Your bread machine will do that for you. And next I want 1 tablespoon of oil. I'm gonna use this light olive oil. You can use any kind of oil that you want, or you can use a tablespoon of melted butter. Coconut oil would work really well, sunflower oil, just whatever you want. Just a nice light tasting oil. So 1 tablespoon of oil. Next we want our brown sugar. I'm gonna use a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. This is light brown sugar, but you can use the dark brown sugar, but this brown sugar is gonna give it some really great flavor. Our next ingredient is our canned pumpkin. This is the star of the show. This canned pumpkin is gonna give this so much flavor. It's gonna be so good. You're gonna want a half a can of this 100% pure pumpkin. Not the pumpkin pie filling, that's totally different. You just want this pure pumpkin puree. You're gonna use a half a can. This is a 15-ounce can, so about 7.5 ounces. It's a little bit more than 3/4 of a cup. So I'm just gonna use half of the can. Oh, I love this pumpkin. I love this orange color. And when I eat pumpkin and sweet potatoes like that, all these things that are orange and high in beta carotene and all those good things, I just feel good. So I love eating lots of pumpkin at this time of year. So half a can of this 15-ounce pumpkin. Our next ingredient is our flour. I'm gonna use 3.5 cups of bread flour. Now, if you don't have bread flour, you can definitely use all-purpose flour, but if you use bread flour, you're gonna get a little bit better risen bread, a little bit different texture, but all-purpose is fine, but I'm gonna use bread flour, so if you have bread flour, get out your bread flour and use it for this recipe. So 3.5 cups goes right on in there in your bread machine bread pan. Our next ingredient is salt. I'm gonna use this ancient fine sea salt that's from North America. That's kind of fun to use, it's pink, but you can use any old regular white table salt. They'll be just fine. So you want 1 teaspoon of salt. Always pour your salt over another bowl or over the sink in case you get a little bit too much. You don't want too much salt in your ingredients. So 1 teaspoon of salt, just put that right on in there with everything else. And next we want some cinnamon. I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of the ground cinnamon. Let's put that right on in there. And I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. I really like pumpkin pie spice, but all this is cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, and cloves. So if you don't have any pumpkin pie spice, but you have some nutmeg, ginger, and cloves, put that together and make about a teaspoon of that, and that'll work just fine. So I'm gonna use 1 teaspoon of this pumpkin pie spice. It's gonna make it taste really good. And our very last ingredient is our yeast. I'm gonna use this active dry yeast. I love this Red Star brand. I've been using this for years and years. You're gonna want 1 tablespoon of yeast. Now, if you don't have any active dry yeast, you can also use instant yeast, rapid rise yeast, bread machine yeast. It's all gonna work just about the same. So use whatever you have. 1 tablespoon of yeast right on in there in your bread machine pan. You can make a little well if you want to, but you don't really have to. I store my yeast in the freezer. I get it out right in time to make bread. I don't let it come to room temperature or anything like that. And that way it stays good for a really good long time. So store your yeast in the freezer. That's my recommendation. All right, those are all of our ingredients for this pumpkin yeast bread. Super simple to throw together. Now I'm just gonna pop this into my bread machine. This is my Zojirushi bread machine. I love it. I love it so much. This is the one I recommend. I've been making bread for a really long time. I've been using bread machines for 22 years now. This is the one I really, really like. This is a great bread machine. It has double paddles, it's super quiet, it's nice and strong, great motor. I'm gonna choose the basic cycle, medium crust, and press start. This is the most important part of bread making when you're using your bread machine. You've got to make sure that your ball of dough looks good. If it's too wet, sticking to the sides and the bottom, your bread is never going to turn out. If it's too dry, it's also not going to turn out very well. So if you just check your ball of dough and make sure it looks about like this, your bread is going to turn out fantastic. Now I'm going to shut the door and let the bread machine do its thing. Here is our pumpkin yeast bread that we made entirely in the bread machine. Doesn't this look good? And I gotta tell you, my house smells incredible. It smells so good in here. This took about 3 hours in the bread machine and I was out running errands. So it sat in my bread machine for about 30 minutes. It got a little brown. This was the medium crust, but it looks really, really, really good. I think this looks amazing. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take a little bit of butter and I'm just gonna spread it all over the top. This is what I like to do for my breads. This will give me a really good soft crust and it'll give it that nice buttery taste, ooh, which is always good. Now this is what I like to do. I just like to cover it in a tea towel. I like that warmth from the bread to give me an even nice softer crust. I don't like to use the cooling racks. I think it gives you kind of a crunchy crust and I like nice soft crust. So this is how I like to cool it. I'm gonna let this sit here just for a little bit and then we'll cut into it and check out our bread. I've let my bread cool slightly. I hate to wait too long because I really, really enjoy nice warm bread that's fresh out of the oven or the bread machine. So even though you should let your bread totally cool for the best crumb and crumble, I'm gonna go ahead and cut into it. It is still warm. This smells so good. Okay, let's see. Oh, that looks so good. That looks incredible. This bread is really, really good with cinnamon honey butter. I've shared that recipe with you before. I'll be sure to link it in the description. Really, really good with this bread. Oh, look how great that looks. Great texture, great crumble. Looks really, really good. I'm gonna cut one more. It feels nice and light and fluffy. It's really, really nice. You can see there's some give to it. Oh, really nice, really great bread machine bread. I'll leave the recipe for this bread machine pumpkin yeast bread down in the description. You can click on it and you can print it and share it. I would appreciate it if you shared it with your friends and family. This is a really fantastic bread recipe to make this time of year. So try it out. It's a fun thing to do in your bread machine. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time on Robin on the Farm. These are the bread bags that I love to use. I always cut up a few slices of bread so that we can just pull it out, and then I slice more as needed just to keep it nice and fresh.
Robin's in the kitchen, dough beneath her hands, wheat from the fields and eggs from her land. Sunlight through the window, a warm golden glow. She's working hard to make that dough.